HomePod Apple style.
Hey, you sound great.
HomePod Apple style.
Hey, Apple's day.
HomePod Apple style.
What's up, everybody? Brian Tong here, and this is my in-depth review of the new HomePod for 2023, and this is the second generation of HomePod, and there is a lot of interest and questions around it, like, why did Apple bring it back? Or is it better than the first gen? Should I get a new one? Should I upgrade from my old one? And you know what? That all is going to depend on who you are, but I'm going to answer all that for you. And once again, like I have done in my reviews, I'm going to let you listen for yourselves in this video to what the new HomePod sounds like compared to other smart home speakers. Now, I did a full unboxing of it earlier that you can check out, and the design stays pretty much relatively the same. You know, from across the room, it looks like exactly like the original HomePod, but the touch surface is now just recessed just a tiny bit here instead of being smoothed out on top like the first gen. This new HomePod comes in two colors. We have white and midnight, and these are 6.6 inches tall. They weigh about 5.1 pounds, which is just a tad smaller from the original HomePod's 6.8 inch height and 5.5 pound weight. But picking them up and looking at them, you know, really side by side, you could just barely tell the difference. The Midnight's mesh fabric is made of 100% recycled plastic, and then the white fabric mesh, this is made out of 30% recycled plastic. There's other components and parts inside of the HomePods that are made of recycled materials, and I mention this because I actually care. Now, the new HomePod has some changes internally. You got 5 beamforming tweeters at the bottom, which is 2 less than the 7 inside the original. Then you have 4 microphones inside here, which is 2 less versus the 6 in the first HomePod. Now, it has different sensors inside to optimize the audio in a room depending on its location. And then there's an S7 chip inside for its processor. That's going to be similar to the Series 7 Apple Watch, and it's really the brains and the processing features that allows it to, you know, create that computational audio and give it its sound signature. So let's just get to this first. How does the new HomePod sound? And I'm going to let you listen for yourselves in just a moment. And I had some help too here. You know, we're going to use my normal home setting like the kitchen here. And it's not a controlled soundproof room because that's not normal and I don't have one. Plus, everyone's living situation is going to be different. But I'm also going to use this. It's an old friend of mine with my other audio video reviews. This is a high quality binaural microphone from 3DO. It's called the Free Space XLR, and it gives you all the ability to hear the sound, the way it's captured as if you were in the room. Now, I recommend that you put on headphones right now if you want the best experience. Check it out here. I'm here in this part of my kitchen. I'm gonna come over this way now. I'm here in this part of the kitchen, but check this out now. Ooh, what does this sound like when I come over to the left side of your ear? But maybe I move over here to come over to the right side of your ear. I mean, I could spend 10 more minutes just talking about and explain this, but you can see there's gonna be a link in the details below that explains it all, because this is gonna be the best way for you to experience what these speakers sound like. Also, I wanted to involve a third party for this test, so my fiance, Shauna, she's bringing her perspective as really the regular consumer who has never done anything like this and isn't an audiophile, and she's gonna offer her thoughts as well. That's while being blindfolded, because I always have a blindfold laying around the house. Now, I am not playing around with this sound test, so we're gonna be comparing a stereo pair of the new 2023 HomePods to the 4th gen Amazon Echo from 2021. We've got a pair of Nest audio speakers from last year. We have a pair of also the original HomePods from 2018 as well. I'm also using Spotify to play all songs from the same service to at least keep things as even as possible. And we tested multiple songs for multiple genres with each speaker set with the audio hitting around 75 to 80 decibels, which is normal. And yes, this is not a perfectly crafted scientific sound test, but really more of a real world test. And that's to get us to our ultimate goal here of figuring out which smart speakers sound the best. Now, Apple recommended a variety of tracks to try out with the HomePod, so you know what? I use them, and that means I'm getting copyright strikes galore on this video, but you know what? This is all for the love of the review. So I'm gonna give you a moment, again, to put on your headphones if you haven't already. okay? And when you're listening, I encourage you to just close your eyes to really sink into the sounds here. So first up is the Amazon Echo versus the Nest Audio with Hotel California from the Eagles from their live. Now, being in the room, it was clear to me that the Amazon Echo, it just had significantly fuller sound with nice mids, a little more oomph in the lows, just really surprisingly how good the lows were. The Nest Audios, they just sounded like they put an emphasis on the highs. It just sounded more flat. It felt like it was just missing so much in person, and it really had weak mids. So what did Shauna think?
Okay.
Okay, which one did you think sounded better for you, and maybe
Oh,
why?
absolutely number one.
And why was
And
that?
I'm gonna take a wild guess. Was that a HomePod?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. It sounded good though.
Okay.
It sounded very full. You could hear the bass. You could hear the singer on the side. I felt like I was in the room with them. It was good.
So number one sounded like a fuller. Number two sounded a little kind of like tinnier, like not as full and well-rounded, right?
I don't know the terms, but yeah, it didn't sound as full, and it sounded a little more shallow.
Oh,
if
very
that makes
good.
any sense.
So I'd love to hear what you think, but here, based on the test and capturing the audio in the room for you, the Echo ranks higher than the Nest. It was pretty clear for me. All right, next up, it's the Amazon Echo versus the new HomePod with Late Night Talking from Harry Styles.
Things haven't been quite the same. There's a haze on the horizon, babe. It's only been a couple of days and I miss you. Yeah. Nothing really goes to plan. You stub your toe, break your can. I do everything I can to help you through. If you're feeling down, I just wanna make you happier, baby. Wish I was around, I just wanna make you happier, baby. We've been doing all this late night talking about anything you wanna till the morning. Now you're in my life, I can't get you off my mind.
Okay, this surprised me, right? This absolutely surprised me. I'm still kind of shook from it. I didn't expect it, but in my ears, in that room, I felt the Echo actually sounded better than the second gen HomePod. I couldn't believe it. You know, the new HomePod just didn't have that same depth and had a lot more focus really on the highs compared to the Echo that had a wider soundstage. Hey, Shauna, what do you think?
Okay, so the first one had more bass. This one is a lot more like hollow, less bass, just more.
I think it's cleaner on the vocals though, but
The vocals are clean, but it's not. I don't like it as much.
yeah, it sounds a little less.
Like if I were to say, oh, which speaker do you want to buy, or which speaker do you like better, or would want to listen to, I'd say the first one because more bassy. There's more variety. The second one's kind of just the same all the way through.
Now, we were both just really surprised by that. You can listen to the samples again for yourself. There's no mix up here. I'm just bringing you what the binaural mics captured. Okay, next up now, let's do this. HomePod 1 versus HomePod 2 with Everybody from Ingrid Michaelson.
We have fallen down again tonight. In this world, it's hard to get it right. Trying to make your heart feel like a glove. What it needs is love, love, love.
this head-to-head with HomePods. The new 2023 HomePod really continues to have an emphasis on the highs again. It still sounds nice, but you get that nice detail. You get those clear voices. Whereas the 2018 HomePod has the details in the highs while still bringing great mids, a little more with the lows, and it just really stood out side by side in comparison. Now the new HomePod, it sounds great, but the original HomePod is even greater than great. Miss Shauna, what are your thoughts about these two?
Number one has, number two's vocals are cleaner. If you're telling me to compare the mids, I feel like number one has more of those mids you're looking for and more of, it's more composed when you play it all together as a song. Number two is more focused on the vocals, less mids.
Very good.
So it's just all, it's kind of cleaner in terms of that. But number one has the whole, like I said, composition, if you want to hear the whole song together.
Now look, you can tell she's just getting better at this, and this was her first time being my guinea pig, but hey, the results are what the results are, and that's from two people in that room and then the recordings that you can hear for yourself. All right, so let's get to the final comparison, and I didn't think we'd be here yet, but that's why we do these listening tests. It's the Amazon Echo versus the original HomePod, and hey, we're gonna give me my Afro beats with Mona Lisa from Lil J. So, what do y'all think, right? Because Shauna knew right away.
All right, like day and night. Number two, more full, more bass. Just when I was dancing, I felt like I wanted to dance to number two more than number one. Number one was cool, but it's not as, doesn't get me doesn't have that
Okay.
Doesn't have that
So here, the HomePod first gen, clearly a step up from the Echo. The audio sounded more dynamic in person. It's just hard to beat the sound from the original HomePod while maintaining its detail. And I've known that they were really good, but this just really confirmed how good they are. And the Echo honestly sounded really good too. But when you compare them, the OG HomePod, it has this real presence and just this wider soundstage. And you'll know when you hear it in person. And here's the thing, right? These speakers, they all sound really good. Well, except for the Nest Audio. But there's obviously more to smart speakers than just their sound, but at least in this sound test, there was a clear winner, and that's still the original HomePod from 2018. I didn't expect this. Now, the new 2023 HomePod, this is no slouch, but listening to it with multiple tracks, right? I felt like, I felt it, Shauna felt it, and you just have to be able to hear it for yourself. Its sound signature is really catered more towards these detailed highs, less of an emphasis on mids, which are there, but just not as strong. And then it has good bass, but not as thumpy bass as others. And I'm not a person who is constantly wanting to listen to overbearing, heavy bass. I just like a more rounded out sound with the details from highs, mids, and lows. And everyone, we know that we all have different preferences for what you like to hear, and really also how we hear music. The shape of our ears can change that as well. But for my preferences, the Amazon Echo outperformed it in this test along with the first gen HomePod. I'm still shook from this. I can't believe that. So, if I had to rank them just speakers, just purely on audio quality, I'm gonna go Nest Audio at a distant fourth, and then we have the HomePod second gen at third. The surprise of the sound test, really, the Amazon Echo comes in at second, and still the king of sound for smart speakers, the original HomePod based on this test in my kitchen. And you know what? I'm sure other people will have different results maybe, but I'm just letting you decide, right? I'm not letting you listen to other people or just me. I'm letting you listen to the samples for yourselves. But what y'all think, right? I would love to see your rankings in the comments based on what you heard. But hey, if you say the Nest Audios were the best speakers, yeah, you can stop watching this video right now. Okay, let's get back to Shauna because she's never done anything like this before, but that's why she's perfect for this. So I think she just really represents most people, not the super particular audiophile junkie that's picking apart everything from a technical standpoint. So Shauna, what'd you think? What surprised you the most in this test?
I'm surprised that, because you brought in the new Apple speaker, I'm surprised that one didn't sound better than the original one and that I like the original one better. So that surprised me. And the fact that I like the Amazon one so much.
For me, I kept on being surprised that she had heard a lot of the same things that I did. I didn't coach her. I just said, hey, listen, just tell me what you think. But it was that obvious just listening to these speakers in person. And, you know, I better be careful before she takes my job because I know some of you have already asked in the comments that she take over the channel. Okay, now this test was done with, again, a stereo pair of speakers, but I stand by the same results with them as individual speakers as well. So let's get that out of our system. Let's get to the other aspects of the new HomePod because it is more than just its sound, right? We got new features. So it brings its compatibility with the Matter platform, and that's obviously going to only open up more smart home device compatibility that Apple's really desperately needed. We got Amazon and Google. They're part of the Matter Alliance, but look, my Nest thermostat, my Nest cameras outside, or my smart blinds, even some plugs that I have, they're still not compatible on HomeKit. My Roborock robot vacuum, it's not compatible either. My Hue smart lights, those work with Apple's HomeKit, but that's about it with my current setup. And I think that if you are just starting to invest and put together a smart home and you're already in the Apple ecosystem, the HomePod is going to be a solid option as long as it is compatible with the smart home devices you currently own or are looking to buy. So you're going to really need to do your research, look at what's compatible right now, and make sure out of the gates. But for me, it's still an issue because, you know, I've been committed to both Google Nest and Amazon platforms for years because Apple, they now are getting serious about the smart home. And I've said it for years, Siri has made improvements, but other voice assistants like, you know, Alexa and Google, they're just a lot more advanced with what they can do. You know, they aren't as private or secure, so there is that trade-off, and that's fundamental to Apple. Google, right, the smartest assistant, and they know everything about you, but it truly can pick up the most things. It just gives you the most detailed information responses. You have, you know, the Alexa that has the compatible devices and mini skills and apps, but do I trust them as much as Apple? No, of course not, but do they work with all the gear that I've invested in? And the answer is yes, and I knew that. I kind of weighed that going into those ecosystems. And they all have different appeal for different users. I think the reality is that most people in general, they just want their smart speaker to set timers, alarms, add things to their calendar, check their weather or sports scores. You know, the HomePod does all of that just fine. And yes, you know, Apple's added multiple timers after years of not being able to do that. I'm also a big fan of just listening to raindrops or waves crashing to relax. You know, I've done that on the Echo for years. Well, Apple has even added those ambient sounds over time. So, you know, they really get the stuff that most people use regularly if they even use it. And we know that there's some ecosystem benefits for Apple users as well. You can control multi-room audio and play music in different rooms at the same time with the same track. You can also use the HomePod as an intercom, and yes, I know you can do that on other smart home platforms. We did do the sound test demo with a stereo pair, but the other thing to note is you can only pair a similar HomePod with another one. So that means you can only create a stereo pair with either two new HomePods like this or two HomePod minis or just two original HomePods. There is no mix and matching. Well, okay, you can mix and match the colors if you want to go like Dalmatian style, but to me, this is still a bit of a bummer for previous owners of a single HomePod who might have been interested in getting another one. But now, honestly, now that we found that there is really a clear sound difference between the two, it makes more sense and it doesn't bother me as much as it did before I shot this review. Now, the new HomePod also has built-in temperature and humidity sensor, and that could be used in the future for measuring, let's say if your house or specific room hits 80 degrees and the sun is shining right into it and it gets too warm, well then you could set your smart blinds to close to keep the sun out. but that also requires you to have blinds that are compatible, and I don't. Now, the sensors in here already existed in the HomePod Mini, and that was recently unlocked in iOS 16.3, so you're going to need to make that update to get access to it. Sound recognition will also be coming to the HomePod in a software update later in the spring. That allows it to listen for smoke or carbon monoxide alarms and then alert you on your phone. And you'll have the ability to check in and hear what's happening on your iPhone or iPad. Now, those are currently the only sounds it will hear on its launch, but I just think hearing other things, like maybe when doors open or hearing movements like maybe footsteps or activity when you're not at home, that could be really helpful. I'd also still like Apple to just be more open with the HomePod. So even if it breaks the Apple ecosystem chain for using an Apple device with Apple Music to the HomePod for really the best audio quality, and it does sound incredible, I wish that they decided to just let any Android device connect to their HomePods via Bluetooth to be used as a speaker. So we know the HomePods, they have Bluetooth 5.0, these new ones do, and it would allow more people to listen to them, be exposed to them, and ultimately sell more HomePods, because you can right now connect AirPods to Android phones right now. Even if you don't get all the Apple ecosystem benefits, you can do it via Bluetooth. So I just think that Apple should open up the HomePod as well, because they have a built-in, really a legit reputation. They've built it up over time for years of making great audio products. I think it only helps them. And then I'd also like to see them allow new HomePods, and let's go even back to HomePod Minis, to detect each other and maybe create a surround sound setup. I know it's not something that everyone will do, but I could see 2 speakers, stereo speakers in the front, 2 speakers in the rear for their hardcore users. This just gives people more options in some ways that I can see them improve, and it would encourage some people to buy multiple HomePods. Now, the new HomePod retails for $299. It's going to be available to customers on February the 3rd, and I am someone who owns 4 first-generation HomePods, and I love how they sound. I did get them on refurb sales when they first came out for like $199 a pop, and they have been worth every penny. So in my current position, which I know is different than some of you who are watching, it just doesn't make sense for me to buy a new HomePod. You got the new Matter compatibility and the thermometer and humidity sensor. Those are welcome, but not enough to get me to make an upgrade. Not yet, at least. And also, in our sound test, they just don't sound as good as the originals that you can no longer buy. So who does this really make sense for, right? Well, if you've never owned a HomePod, I think the new HomePods still sound great, and on their own, they sound really, really good. And it does emphasize, right, the vocals and highs this time around a little more than the previous ones, but it's not trash. It sounds really good. So if you're ready to make the jump to Apple's smart home platform, look, they're going to be appealing if $299 is the right price for you. Now, there are plenty of people that missed out on the original HomePod the first time around that now want in. Hey, this is now your chance to get in as well. And then the smart home landscape, we know it's still changing, and it is still evolving from what it was even just 5 years ago, even 2 or 3 years ago, because Apple has the luxury of just playing this long game here. And maybe it's people who bought their first Mini that are going to be the people who now want to bring in a full-size HomePod with better sound. I mean, that makes sense to me, because it's the HomePod Mini, after all, that really helped Apple grow its smart home market share with this really digestible $99 price point. But for me, it's just hard for me in my position to give the HomePod, my full blessing at $299 right now, specifically because I own 4 of them. If you were in my position, I think you'd understand, but that doesn't mean that you're me. I think if you're all Apple all the time, you're just going to completely ignore what I said and you're going to get some. But I would really say, if the new HomePod was $199, I'd say absolutely get one. It'd be no-brainer, quite honestly. I'd probably buy one on top of my 4 if it was $199. If it was $249, I'd say, okay, you know what, that still works for me. I already said I own the originals, and they're still going strong, and because of that, I'm leaving this apple on the tree for now. For now. So let's remove the blindfold, and I know you won't remember a lot of things, but in the very first test that we did, you were like, oh, one just sounds like flat, but the one sounded really good. It was a comparison between the Amazon Echo and the Google, the Nest Audio.
And I like the Amazon one better?
You like the Amazon better than the Nest Audio.
Oh,
Okay, so that was test 1.
okay.
Then because you did that, we went to, then we went separately. We then went to we went to
Amazon
Echo
compared
versus
to-
HomePod 2.
And what
And
did
guess which one did you like better?
Did I like Amazon better than
You
the
liked
HomePod?
Amazon better, but
Stop.
actually I agreed with you. I thought that the bass
Oh, no
on
way.
the Amazon Echo at those volume levels was, we were listening,
Yeah.
was better.
Wow, that's funny. Because
I
in
thought
my
it-
mind, I was like, oh, maybe this is a HomePod.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
The HomePod
Right?
2 did sound clearer on the highs and the voice, but the overall full sound,
Yeah.
the Amazon was able to give a little more bass and oomph. So-
Oh,
Okay. Then
the blindfold test worked.
we went from you kept on thinking the best one is HomePod, best one is HomePod.
I was just like, is this a HomePod? Is it 1 or 2? We'll see.
Okay. Then we went to HomePod 1 versus HomePod 2.
Ooh, I'm interested in hearing
Which one
this
do you
one.
think you thought sounded better?
Did I like HomePod 1?
Yes. HomePod 1, the original
No
HomePod,
way!
was the one that stood out. So after
Wow.
that, we then compared HomePod 1 to Amazon Echo. Which one do you think was did the best?
HomePod 1.
HomePod 1.
Yay!
So, and-
I like that one. That's
Yeah.
why. But I didn't know you were testing that.
Correct. So
So-
the surprise here was that, and I agreed, the Amazon Echo held its ground with
Yeah.
the second-gen HomePod, and the original HomePod was performed better than the new second-gen HomePod.
Yeah, that-
Right?
Good experiment.
No, this is great.
Because I would have guessed like, oh, the best sounding one would have been the newest product. It would have been the HomePod 2, right? So I was kind of listening in for that, but I didn't even know one of those Amazon products was one of the ones I liked.
That
So that's actually
surprised me.
surprising,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
actually a good thing.